The huge crystal room was filled with strange sounds and smells Ambassador Deho had never gotten used to even after 5 years of coming here. The Galactic Council chamber was bigger than any building on Earth, with walls that glowed soft blue, and a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. Above them, floating lights moved slowly like lazy fireflies, casting shadows that danced across the faces of beings from 1,000 different worlds. Deho stood straight in his black Earth suit, feeling very small among the giants and monsters that filled the chamber. His aide Jiwoo stood next to him, holding her electronic pad tight. Her hands were shaking a little, but she tried to hide it. The young woman had been working with human diplomats for 3 years, but she still felt scared when surrounded by so many alien creatures. The Vorthic Prime Minister was the first to speak. His body looked like a giant bug standing on 2 legs with 4 arms and a head covered in sharp spikes. When he talked, his mouth parts clicked together, making sounds like breaking bones. His voice came through the translation machine, sounding cold and mean. "He is nothing but a talking animal," the Vorthek said, pointing one of his sharp-clawed hands at Deho. "These humans are barely smarter than the pets we keep in our gardens. They got into space by accident, and now they think they deserve to sit with real civilized beings." The other aliens in the room made sounds that Deho had learned meant they were agreeing. Some hissed, some clicked, some made deep rumbling noises. The Zilarian delegate was a creature that looked like a giant snake with arms. She raised her long neck high and spoke with a voice like steam escaping from a podi have studied. "Their history," she said, her tongue flicked out to taste the air. "They are violent and stupid. They fight wars over tiny pieces of land. They poison their own world with chemicals. They kill each other for metal discs and pieces of paper they call money. What wisdom could such primitive creatures possibly offer?" Jiwoo felt her face getting hot with anger, but she knew better than to speak out of turn. She had seen what happened to humans who got too emotional in front of the aliens. They were dismissed as proof that humans could not control themselves. The Krillian ambassador was next to speak. This being was made of pure energy trapped inside a crystal shell that looked like a diamond the size of a person. When it talked, the crystal glowed brighter and the air around it felt warm. Its voice sounded like music, but the words were cruel. "We have traveled between stars for 50,000 years, the Krillian said. The light inside its crystal body pulsed like a heartbeat. "We have built cities that float in space and machines that can create new suns. Your entire species learned to fly less than 200 years ago. You are infants playing with toys. You do not understand." More sounds of agreement filled the chamber. Deho looked around at the hundreds of alien faces staring at him. Some looked curious, like people watching animals at a zoo. Others looked bored, as if this whole meeting was a waste of time. A few looked disgusted, as if humans were some kind of disease that needed to be cured. The Vorthic Prime Minister continued talking, his voice getting louder and more angry. "They want equal representation in the council," he said, making the clicking sound that meant he thought something was very funny. "They want to vote on laws that will affect civilizations older than their sun. They want to be treated like equals when they are barely more evolved than the creatures that crawl in dirt." A new voice joined the conversation. This one belonged to the Nixarian Trade Master, a being that looked like a walking tree with glowing fruits hanging from its branches. Its voice was deep and slow, like wind blowing through leaves. "I have done business with humans for 3 years now," the Trade Master said. "Every deal they make is small and simple. They offer us water and carbon-based food that only a few species can even eat. They have no rare metals, no advanced technology, nothing that the galaxy truly needs, yet they act as if their contributions matter." The chamber erupted in what humans had learned to recognize as alien laughter. Some species made barking sounds, others whistled, still others made noises like grinding metal. Jiwoo watched her ambassador closely. She could see something changing in his face. The polite diplomatic expression he always wore was slowly melting away. The Altarian Science Council representative spoke next. This being looked almost human except for its blue skin and the tentacles that grew from the back of its head like hair. Its voice was cold and clinical, like a doctor explaining why a patient would die. "We have analyzed human science and technology," the Altarian said. "Our children learn more advanced concepts in their first year of education. Human medicine is crude and painful. Human engineering is inefficient and wasteful. Human mathematics is so primitive that our computing machines cannot even process their equations without laughing. The insults continued for another hour, each species taking turns. To explain why humans were worthless, the Galactic Council had originally welcomed humanity because they were curious about a new species. Now, after 5 years of watching humans try to fit in, they had decided that humans were not worth the trouble. Deho listened to every word. He had heard some of these insults before in private conversations and behind closed doors. But this was the first time they were being said openly in the official chamber of the Galactic Council. This was not just rudeness anymore. This was an official statement that humanity was not welcome among the civilized species of the galaxy. Finally, the Vorthek Prime Minister called for order in the chamber. The alien laughter slowly died down as hundreds of different species turned their attention back to the two humans standing alone in the center of the room. So, human ambassador, the Vorthek said, "What do you say to the wisdom of this council? Will you accept that your species needs more time to grow and mature before you can truly join galactic society? Will you withdraw your request for equal representation and be content with the observer status we have generously granted?" Yuji Wu held her breath. This was the moment that would decide humanity's future in the galaxy. If Deho agreed to the alien demands, humans would forever be treated as junior partners, never allowed to have real influence over the laws and decisions that affected their colonies and trade routes. But if he refused, the consequences could be terrible. The aliens controlled the technology humans needed to travel between stars. They controlled the trade routes that brought wealth to Earth. They controlled the defense networks that protected human worlds from pirates and hostile force. Deho looked around the chamber one more time. His eyes met those of beings who had shared meals with him, beings he had thought were friends, beings who had smiled and been polite to his face while planning this humiliation behind his back. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Finally, Deho opened his mouth to speak. His voice was quiet, but somehow it carried to every corner of the vast chamber. "Distinguished delegates," he said, using the formal words that protocol required, "I have listened carefully to your wisdom and your concerns. You have made your position very clear. You believe that humanity is primitive, violent, stupid, and worthless. You believe that we have nothing to offer galactic civilization. You believe that we are barely more than animals who learn to use tools." He paused, and Jiwoo saw something in his eyes that made her take a step backward. "Very well." Deho continued, his voice still quiet, but with something dangerous growing underneath the calm words. "If that is truly how you see my species, then perhaps it is time for us to reconsider our place in this galaxy." The chamber suddenly felt very cold. Captain Gensia was drinking his morning coffee on the bridge of the human cargo ship Morning Star when the message arrived. The ship was docked at Nexus Station 7, one of the biggest trading posts in the galaxy, where humans had been buying and selling goods for the past 5 years. The station was like a small city floating in space, with thousands of different species all working together to make money. The message came through on the emergency channel, which meant it was very important. Hyun-Ki put down his coffee cup and read the words on his screen 3 times before he could believe what they said. All human personnel and citizens must leave galactic space within 48 hours. Pack only what you can carry. Destroy anything that might be useful to aliens. Complete silence is required. Do not explain your actions to anyone. His first officer, Commander So Young, was checking the cargo manifest when she saw the captain's face change color. "Sir," she said, walking over to look at the message. "What does this mean? Why would Earth Command order a complete evacuation?" Yun-Ki stood up and looked out the big window at Nexus Station 7. He could see human ships docked all around the station. Human workers were loading and unloading cargo. Human families were walking through the shopping areas. Human children were playing in the recreation zones. In 2 days, all of them would be gone. "I do not know why," he said quietly, "but orders are orders. Send the recall signal to all human personnel. Tell them to report to their ships immediately for emergency departure. Tell them to bring only personal items and leave everything else behind." Across the galaxy, the same scene was happening on hundreds of worlds and stations. Human managers were quietly closing their offices. Human teachers were leaving their classrooms. Human doctors were walking away from their hospitals. Human engineers were shutting down their machines and walking away without saying goodbye. On the Mining world of Kepler 442b. Dr. Neri had spent 3 years developing a new way to extract rare metals from the planet's core. Her alien coworkers trusted her completely because her methods were much better than anything they had tried before. She had increased production by 400% and made the mining company billions of credits. But when the recall message came, she deleted all her research files, wiped her computer clean, and walked out of the laboratory. The alien miners watched in confusion as she packed her few personal belongings and headed for the spaceport. When they asked her where she was going, she just smiled and said she had been called home. Dr. Minho was working in the Galactic Medical Research Center, where he had been developing new treatments for diseases that affected multiple species. His work was so advanced that alien doctors came from across the galaxy to learn from him. He had discovered cures for illnesses that had killed millions of beings for thousands of years. When the evacuation order came, he destroyed his research notes, wiped his laboratory computers, and packed his equipment into cases that would never be opened again. His alien colleagues begged him to stay. They offered him more money, more resources, more honor, but he just shook his head and walked away, leaving behind medical breakthroughs that could have saved countless lives. The evacuation was so well planned that it seemed like magic. Human ships appeared at human colonies within hours. Human families were picked up from their homes with just their clothes and memories. Human businesses closed their doors and their owners vanished into space. The aliens who worked with humans found empty offices and abandoned workshops with no explanation of where everyone had gone at. Nexus Station 7, the alien merchants arrived for work to find the human shops closed. The restaurant where Ambassador Nari had once served Earth food to curious aliens was empty, with tables still set for customers who would never come. The human-run repair shops that fixed alien machines were locked tight with no one to answer the communication panels. The Vorthak trade representative tried to contact the human shipping company that delivered goods to his homeworld. The communication system told him that the number was no longer in service. He tried to visit their office but found it empty except for some furniture and a few pieces of paper that meant nothing to him. Commander Tejo was in charge of evacuating the human colony on Rigel Prime, where 15,000 humans had built farms and factories over the past 4 years. The colonists did not ask questions when the evacuation ships arrived. They just packed their things and climbed aboard, trusting that their government had good reasons for the sudden departure. The alien government of Rigel Prime watched in confusion as the humans left behind fully working farms and factories. The food production systems that fed half the planet were abandoned. The manufacturing plants that made critical machine parts were left empty. The power generators that provided electricity to alien cities were shut down, with no one left who knew how to restart them. Within 48 hours, every human in galactic space had vanished. It was as if the entire species had never existed. The only signs they had ever been there were the empty buildings they left behind and the systems they had built that were now failing without human maintenance. The aliens began to notice problems within hours. Communication networks that humans had quietly maintained started showing error messages. Transportation systems that humans had coordinated began experiencing delays. Manufacturing processes that humans had improved started producing defective products. On the Galactic Council Station, the Vorthak Prime Minister tried to contact the human embassy to demand an explanation. He found the building sealed and empty, with only a simple message posted on the door: the Terran Federation withdraws from galactic affairs. Do not attempt contact. The galaxy had dismissed humans as worthless primitives. Now those worthless primitives were gone, and the aliens were beginning to realize that nothing worked the same way without them. 3 months after the humans disappeared, Systems Manager Jamin sat in a secret base hidden deep inside an asteroid in the Sol system. The base was built inside a hollowed-out rock that looked like any other piece of space debris, but inside it was filled with the most advanced technology humans had ever created. Jamin watched dozens of screens that showed him everything happening across the galaxy. The screens displayed information gathered by tiny spy devices and quantum communication systems that the aliens had never known existed. For 5 years, while the aliens thought humans were primitive and helpless, humans had been watching everything and learning everything. His assistant, Lieutenant Dayun, worked at a control panel covered With lights and switches, her job was to monitor the alien communication networks and report on how badly things were falling apart since the humans left. The news was worse than even the humans had expected. The Centauri trade route is completely broken, she reported. Her fingers danced across holographic displays that showed cargo ships wandering lost in space. Ships that used to make the journey in 5 days are now taking 3 weeks if they make it at all. The navigation systems that humans maintained are giving wrong directions, and some ships have disappeared completely. Min nodded as he made notes on his electronic pad. What about the mining operations? Production has dropped by 60% on all the worlds where humans worked. The alien supervisors do not understand the systems that humans built. They are trying to use their old methods, but those methods do not work anymore. The humans changed everything to make it better, but now no one knows how to make it work. The screens showed images of alien factories that had ground to a halt. Machines that humans had modified sat silent and useless because no one understood how to operate them. Alien engineers stood around looking confused as production lines that had once run perfectly began producing garbage. Captain Tejo monitored the situation from his warship hidden in the dark space between star systems. His ship was invisible to alien sensors because humans had developed stealth technology that the aliens could not even imagine. The ship could fly right through an alien fleet without being detected, sir. His communications officer reported, we are receiving hundreds of distress calls from alien merchant ships. They are requesting navigation assistance. They seem to be completely lost. The host smiled grimly as he watched alien ships on his tactical display. The same aliens who had mocked human navigation techniques were now helplessly lost in star systems they had traveled through for centuries. Human navigators had been quietly fixing their calculations, correcting their star charts, and updating their navigation computers in real time. Without the humans, the alien navigation systems were using information that was decades out of date. The water world of Kepler 442b, the alien colonists watched their atmospheric processors begin to fail. The machines that kept their cities breathable had been maintained by a human technician named Yunji. She had spent 3 years learning how the planet's strange atmosphere worked and developing new ways to keep the air clean and safe. Now that she was gone, the machines were slowly breaking down. The alien technicians tried to fix them, but they discovered that Yunji had modified the systems in ways they could not understand. She had improved the efficiency by 300%, but her modifications were based on scientific principles that the aliens had never learned. The Solarian Science Council held emergency meetings as their research projects stopped working. Dr. Yunho had been their most successful researcher, making breakthrough discoveries almost every month. The aliens had assumed that his success was because they gave him good equipment and guidance, but now they realized they had been wrong. His research notes were written in a form of mathematics that none of them could read. His laboratory equipment had been modified in ways that made no sense to them. His experimental procedures were based on theories that their best scientists could not understand. Without him, their research program collapsed completely. Food production across the galaxy began to fail. Human agricultural experts had been quietly improving alien farming methods, developing new crops and creating better fertilizers. The aliens thought their increased food production was because of better weather and good luck. Now they discovered that human innovations had been feeding billions of beings who were now facing starvation. The galactic defense grid that protected trade routes from pirates and hostile forces began showing massive system failures. Human technicians had been maintaining the early warning sensors and coordinating responses to threats. The alien military officers who thought they were in charge discovered that humans had been doing all the real work while they sat in meetings and gave speeches. Pirate attacks increased by 800% as the criminals realized that the defense systems were no longer working properly. Merchant ships that had traveled safely for years were now being attacked and robbed. Entire trade routes were abandoned as alien shippers refused to risk their valuable cargo. The Altarian Trade Federation lost 17 billion credits in the first month as their shipping network collapsed. Human logistics coordinators had been managing the complex schedules that kept thousands of ships moving efficiently. Without them, alien ship captains found themselves waiting weeks for loading permits that never came. The galaxy was beginning to understand that the primitive humans they had insulted were actually the invisible foundation that held their civilization together. The helpful, eager humans who had volunteered for boring maintenance jobs were actually the most important people in the galaxy, and now they were gone. The beings who had laughed at human stupidity were discovering that they were the stupid ones, the species that had dismissed human contributions as worthless were learning that those contributions had been keeping them alive. The civilizations that had existed for thousands of years were falling apart without the help of a species that had been in space for less than a century. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, human ships waited and watched as the galaxy that had rejected them slowly destroyed itself. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen panic like this before. 6 months after the human withdrawal, the greatest civilizations in the galaxy were begging for help. The proud beings who had once dismissed humanity as worthless animals were now admitting that their worlds were dying without human assistance. The Vorthik Prime Minister stood before the emergency assembly, but his confident arrogance was gone. His chitin was dull and cracked from stress, and his forearms shook as he spoke. "We must face the truth," he said in a voice that barely carried across the vast chamber. "Our infrastructure is collapsing at a rate we cannot control. Trade efficiency has dropped below sustainable levels. Several of our oldest colonies are now completely cut off from galactic civilization." The Krillian ambassador pulsed with desperate energy inside his crystal shell. "My people have attempted to understand the human modifications to our systems," he admitted. "The complexity is beyond our comprehension. Their simple solutions were based on mathematical principles that our greatest minds cannot grasp. We have been fools to dismiss their intelligence." Admiral S.C. Ojin watched these proceedings from his flagship hidden in the vast emptiness between galaxies. The ship TNS Retribution was completely invisible to alien technology, using stealth systems that humanity had developed in secret over the past 5 years. Around his ship floated a fleet of human warships that the aliens could never have imagined existed. His intelligence officer, Commander Min Young, translated the alien communications with barely hidden satisfaction. "So," she reported, "the Zilarian Science Council is discussing the possibility of surrendering their independence to any species that can restore their failing systems. They are offering to become a vassal state in exchange for technical assistance." Seo Jun smiled coldly as he studied the tactical displays showing alien fleet movements. The same beings who had called humans primitive were now so desperate they would give up their freedom just to make their machines work again. "Continue monitoring their communications," he ordered. "I want to know the moment they decide to send ships to Earth." On Earth, President Sung Min met with his advisors in the deep underground command center that had been built in secret over the past decade. The room was filled with screens showing the incredible progress humanity had made since withdrawing from galactic society. Human technology had advanced at an impossible rate once they stopped sharing their discoveries with aliens. General Kyung Ho presented his report to the assembled leaders. "Sir, our manufacturing capacity now exceeds the combined production of the 5 largest alien civilizations. Our new shipyards are producing vessels with capabilities that no alien species can match. Most importantly, our weapons development program has achieved total superiority over any possible enemy." The president leaned back in his chair as he absorbed this information. "What about our defensive capabilities? Our planetary shield generators can deflect any weapon in the alien arsenal," General Kyung Ho replied. "Our orbital defense platforms can destroy entire fleets before they get within weapons range. Any alien force that attempts to attack Earth will be eliminated before they understand what is happening to them." But the most shocking revelation came from Dr. Hyo Jin, the head of the Human Technology Assessment Division. "Mr. President," she said, holding up a datapad that would change everything, "our analysis of alien technology is complete. Every system they use, every weapon they carry, every ship they fly is based on scientific principles that we mastered." 50 years ago, the room fell completely silent as the implications of her words sank in. "They have been technologically stagnant for over 10,000 years, she continued. "Their faster-than-light travel is a crude application of space folding that Our children now learn in elementary school. Their energy weapons are so primitive that our basic defensive shields make them completely harmless. Their computer systems are less advanced than what we used in the 20th century. President Seung-min felt a cold smile spread across his face, so when they called us primitive animals who stumbled into space by accident, they were describing themselves. She finished. We are not the junior partners in this relationship. Mr. President, we are the advanced species that has been carrying the rest of the galaxy on our backs. They have been surviving on technology they inherited from their ancestors without understanding how any of it actually works across the galaxy. The crisis deepened every day. The Andromeda Mining Consortium declared bankruptcy as their automated systems failed without human oversight. 17 colonies voted to declare independence from their parent governments, claiming they could no longer survive under the current system. The Orion Medical Research Station experienced a catastrophic disease outbreak when their containment systems failed, killing thousands of researchers. The Nexarian trademaster, who had once dismissed human contributions as worthless, now stood before the Galactic Council begging for help. Our economy has collapsed, he admitted. 60% of our trade routes are unusable. Our manufacturing output has dropped to levels not seen in 1,000 years. Our people are rioting in the streets demanding that we bring the humans back. The Altarian Science Council representative was next to speak, her blue skin pale with fear. We have discovered that human scientific knowledge was centuries ahead of our own, she said. Every breakthrough we thought we had made was actually based on human research that we did not understand. We have been children playing with tools built by masters. The chamber erupted in desperate discussions as the alien representatives tried to find solutions to problems they could not even comprehend. Some suggested sending military forces to Earth to demand that humans return and fix their broken systems. Others proposed offering massive payments and concessions in exchange for human assistance. But the Vorthic Prime Minister had the most frightening realization of all. What if they do not want to come back, he asked. What if the humans have decided that we are not worth saving? What if they have concluded that the galaxy would be better off without us? The silence that followed this question was filled with the growing understanding that humanity might have already decided the fate of every alien civilization, and there was nothing any of them could do to stop what was coming. The first attack came like lightning from a clear sky. The Proxima Centauri system had been a peaceful trade hub for over 2,000 years, with massive space stations and shipping platforms that served hundreds of different species. Alien merchants and travelers moved through the system every day, carrying goods and passengers across the galaxy without fear. Then the human ships appeared. Admiral Seo Jun watched the battle from the bridge of his flagship as 12 human warships materialized from hyperspace using technology that made them appear like ghosts. The alien defense fleet stationed at Proxima Centauri had 60 ships, but they might as well have been children throwing rocks at tanks. The human vessels moved through space like nothing the aliens had ever seen. They bent space around themselves, making them nearly impossible to target. They fired weapons that cut through alien shields like paper and turned the strongest armor into vapor in seconds, sir, reported his tactical officer, Commander Dong Ha. The alien fleet is attempting to surrender. They are broadcasting on all frequencies, requesting permission to evacuate their personnel. Denied. Seo Jun replied coldly. They wanted to see what primitive humans could accomplish. Let them see. The battle lasted exactly 18 minutes. When it was over, 60 alien warships had been reduced to glowing debris floating in space. The human ships had not received so much as a scratch on their hull armor around them. The massive trade stations and orbital platforms that had taken centuries to build were being systematically destroyed, but the humans were not simply attacking, they were harvesting. The alien stations were being broken down by massive human engineering ships that appeared after the battle. These vessels used technology that could disassemble entire space stations, piece by piece, sorting the materials and loading them into cargo holds for transport back to human space. The aliens watching from nearby systems could not understand what they were seeing. The humans were taking apart their civilization like mechanics stripping a broken machine for spare parts. Every piece of metal, every computer system, every power generator was being collected and carried away. News of the attack spread across the galaxy within hours. Alien governments that had dismissed humanity as harmless were suddenly faced with the reality that the most dangerous military force in known space was hunting them. The species that had laughed at human stupidity were now terrified that those same humans were coming for them. Second wave of attacks began 3 days later. 17 star systems were hit simultaneously by human forces that appeared without warning, destroyed everything in their path, and vanished back into hyperspace before alien reinforcements could arrive. Mining platforms that had operated for millennia were reduced to scrap metal. Agricultural worlds that fed billions of beings were stripped of their orbital infrastructure. Defense stations that had protected trade routes for thousands of years were obliterated in minutes. Captain Tejo commanded the human assault on the Rigel system, where he had once helped evacuate human colonists. The irony was not lost on him as he watched alien cities burn. The same world that had benefited from human farming and manufacturing was now being systematically destroyed by human weapons. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are receiving surrender offers from the planetary government. They are promising to pay any price we demand if we spare their civilian population. Tell them that primitives do not negotiate with civilized species. Tejo replied using the exact words that aliens had once used to describe humans. Let them experience what it feels like to be dismissed as worthless. The alien civilian population watched in horror as human ships landed on their world and began dismantling their cities piece by piece. Human soldiers moved through the streets with mechanical precision, collecting anything useful and destroying everything else. The advanced technology that aliens had taken for granted was loaded onto transport ships and carried away, but the most terrifying part was the silence. The human soldiers did not speak to the aliens, did not explain their actions, did not respond to pleas for mercy. They worked with the cold efficiency of machines, completing their mission without emotion or hesitation. On the water world of Kepler 442b, where Dr. Yunji had once maintained the atmospheric processors, human engineering teams arrived to reclaim the technology she had developed. The alien colonists who had once taken her work for granted now watched as the systems that kept them alive were carefully removed and transported to human ships. Please, one of the alien engineers begged, approaching a human technician. We do not understand how these systems work. Without them, our people will die. The human technician looked at the alien with cold eyes. For 5 years, my people maintained your life support systems, he said. We improved your efficiency, we prevented disasters, we kept you alive, and you called us worthless animals. Now you can learn to survive without us. Dr. Minho led the human team that attacked the Galactic Medical Research Center, where he had once worked to save alien lives. His former colleagues watched in disbelief as he personally destroyed the facilities where he had made his greatest discoveries. Minho, one of his alien colleagues, called out, "You saved millions of lives here. How can you destroy your own work?" I offered to share my knowledge with the galaxy, Minho replied as he deleted medical databases that contained cures for hundreds of diseases. The galaxy decided that human contributions were worthless. Now the galaxy can discover what it means to live without human medicine. Across known space, the pattern repeated. Human forces struck without warning, destroyed critical infrastructure, collected anything valuable, and disappeared before effective resistance could be organized. The aliens who had dismissed humanity as primitive found themselves helpless against technology they could not understand, facing an enemy they had created through their own arrogance. The galaxy that had once looked down on humanity with condescending amusement was now burning under the cold fury of a species that had been pushed too far. The primitive animals had become apex predators, and they were hunting the civilizations that had rejected the man in the darkness between stars. More human ships waited their turn to join the hunt. Part 6. The New Galactic Order. 1 year after the human withdrawal, the galaxy looked nothing like it had before. Where thousands of independent worlds had once thrived under the protection of the Galactic Council, now there were only 3 types of space human-controlled territory. The shrinking free zones, where surviving aliens huddled together, and the vast dead regions where abandoned worlds drifted silent and empty. Admiral Seojin stood on the observation deck of the TNS Dominion, humanity's new command ship, as it orbited what had once been the Galactic Council station. The ancient structure had been completely rebuilt using human Technology and engineering, its flowing organic curves had been replaced by sharp angular lines that spoke of efficiency and power weapons platforms. Bristled from every surface powered by fusion reactors that burned brighter than small stars, sir, reported Captain Yan Seo, his personal aide. The delegation from the Remnant Alliance has arrived. They are requesting permission to come aboard their ships, are broadcasting surrender codes on all frequencies. Show them to the main conference room, Seo Jin ordered, and make sure they see the memorial wall